All right, let me bring in my guest here. Flying in all the way from hometown. What's your hometown again?
Detroit.
Detroit is Michael Jaafar. Great to see you. Big case Mike. Big trial Mike. National trial attorney. Mike, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me here in the studio. Let's begin with the verdict in the Chad Daybell case. First, I want to get your reaction, of course.
You know, when the prosecution rested, you teased me on air for telling me that I was on an island on my own because I didn't believe
You're still out there, Mike?
I want to confirm that the island has gotten lonelier today. It's gotten very lonely today. I think I'm looking around. I think I'm the only guy left on this island. Marie Pereira never joined the island, right? So, Michael, I still believe that the case against him just wasn't proven, right? I understand that all of my colleagues disagree. There was no forensic evidence that tied him to the crime, to the murders, you know, of the children. You know, he had a villainous brother-in-law. His wife is mentally deranged. She's still his wife. I don't believe the case was proven. There was no forensic evidence that tied him. Whereas I do believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, he conspired to cover it up. But that's a reasonable interpretation that maybe he found out about it. His crazy wife and ex-brother-in-law, you know, murdered their niece and their children, and he was just put in that position. I just don't see any evidence compelling that showed he was involved with the actual murder of the children. The wife is different.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I could spend the next 20 minutes going through the evidence that I believe, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things. One, the kids were found on his property. He's texting back and forth with Alex right at the point where he's headed to bury the bodies on his property. For me, I had been questioning whether he was the mastermind of this thing until I got the full breadth of the texts between he and Lori. And it made it clear to me that he was the guy at the head of the plan. She was asking him, is the plan still on? What's the plan? Are things still going along the way we thought they would go? And he was fully along for the ride. So whether she was the mastermind or not, I felt like that showed that he was fully along for the ride, knew what was going on, so I have no problem at all with the conviction. But now we go into the penalty phase, the big question, Mike. Big question, does he get the death penalty for his crimes? Number one, first and foremost, when we talk about aggravating factors, heinousness of the crime. 2 dead children. We saw how they were killed. We saw how they were found. What do you think?
I looked at this in Idaho for the same reasons that I don't believe the case was proven, and I acknowledge that I could be wrong on that. I don't believe that the situation for the death penalty applies because there's 6 aggravating factors, but there's mitigating factors, right? The jury has to actually decide this unanimously. And of the aggravating factors, I think only one of them really applies. The heinousness obviously applies, but no prior criminal record. He was not even physically involved in these murders, right? If the allegations are correct, he conspired for other people to commit the murders. There's mitigating factors. He's an old man. He has no prior record. He has no chance of recidivism. So I don't believe, I confidently say that the factors for the death penalty do not apply. There's too many mitigating factors and not enough aggravating. Of the 6 aggravating factors, I don't think only one of them applies.
All right, fair enough. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we are expecting the penalty phase to begin around 5 o'clock or so. Of course, we'll take you out there for anything important. All right, let me bring in Michael Jaafar very quickly. Michael, I want to get your reaction to that verdict there in New York. Donald Trump found guilty of all charges.
Completely unprecedented. What do we do now? Is he going to stay out on bond? Is he going to be sentenced to jail? If he's eventually sentenced to jail, which jail is on the table, do you take the Secret Service into jail with him? Because they can't be in general population. So I'm flabbergasted. This is unprecedented. I'm going to be glued to the TV. I want to see what happens. But yeah, this is completely unprecedented. I have no idea what this judge is going to do.
Now, Mike, I will say this. He violated the gag order in the case, I think 9 times, 8 or 9 times. And the judge on a number of occasions said, look, if you don't stop, I'm going to throw you to jail. And he kept saying, I don't want to do that. He eventually, of course, didn't do that. I don't think he wants to send someone like Donald Trump to jail. Again, we do know there are a number of political implications as far as that goes. And as I said, there are options: house arrest, probation. This is the type of case where that may be very much appropriate. So those could be possibilities.
Even though the judge cannot consider what's beneficial for the broad population society, he's going to have to in this case, because if he puts house arrest, for example, that you can't campaign 5 months out of a presidential election, some people saying the most important presidential election in their lifetime, right? So house arrest means he can't campaign. So the half of the country that really believes that this is a conspiracy is going to be now even more emboldened. So all of this is on this judge's shoulders. This judge, in addition to getting death threats and people harassing it outside, there's a scene outside of the courthouse, right? So it's going to be very, very, very challenging for this judge to concoct some sort of a now he's got to sentence him. What does he do?
Yeah, that's a big question. Folks, if you're just joining us, we just learned moments ago that former President Donald Trump was found guilty on all charges in his historic hush money trial going on in New York. And again, the question is, what happens next? Of course, jail time is on the table. House arrest, probation are also on the table for the former president. But again, also he's, again, the presumptive elector or presumptive nominee for president for the Republican Party. So that has to, again, be taken into account. This morning, when they did the readback, really they asked for it yesterday. In my experience here at Court TV, whenever there's a readback, Michael, shortly thereafter, the jury delivers a verdict. Because really what they have is a question that needs to be answered, and generally that readback will answer that question. They go in, discuss it, and then have a verdict. It seems like that might have been what happened.
I think that's exactly what happened. I was very puzzled by the fact that the judge did not give them a copy of the jury instructions. They just went into the box, and he read the jury instructions, and they remember. Even I can't remember the jury instructions. I have to circle back to them. So you are right. When they do a readback, usually the verdict comes right after that because they're trying to clarify an actual legal point. These are not professionals, right? These are people who are doing a civic duty, and they're sitting on a jury. This is the only time they've done it in their lives. And so when they ask for a readback, usually it's because they're trying to overcome, there's 2 or 3 jurors in the box, they're trying to overcome a specific issue, they debate, they need it read back, and then they make a decision.
Yeah. I thought this might have been a referendum on the testimony of Michael Cohen. But as you know, in a case like this, you can't convict on accomplice testimony. So just on his testimony, you couldn't convict. What he said in court was enough to convict, which is why I thought the Pecker testimony, the gentleman who ran or was in charge of the editorial for National Enquirer, his testimony was so important because it corroborated, at least to some extent, Michael Cohen's testimony. And that's why when they asked for that readback, I thought it might have been a done deal.
I think so. I agree, because when Michael Cohen was testifying, right, this is a person who had direct knowledge. He had the most intimate type of professional relationship you could have with the defendant as their attorney. I don't recall the last time an attorney was testifying against his former client. And I'm sure it's happened, but when that happens, you go numb. You get goosebumps because, oh, my God, you tell everything to your attorney, right? But then the corroboration by the National Enquirer witness, that pretty much sealed it. I have my opinions, but in hindsight, it looks like you're right. That's what happened.
Yeah, and you know, Michael Cohen was the shadowy, shady character, right? We all know that. And there was a question as to whether this jury would even believe him. The prosecution, you know, had to call him. And you're a trial attorney, so you know this. When you're dealing with these type of shady and shadowy situations, you got to deal with shady and shadowy characters. Yeah. And I think maybe the jury took that into account.
Most attorneys, and some of the most successful ones, had theater majors, right? I don't know what his undergraduate, but you're an actor. You're in an arena, and he knew exactly how to act. And again, he had first-hand knowledge. This was my client, and he abused me. He made me go out and fix stuff for him, right? And we all have watched Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. That's who this guy is. He's the Better Call Saul guy.
Yeah, the guy who's willing to do just about anything, right? Because you can use your law degree in many, many ways. Yeah. I was told that by a mentor very early on, and you're going to choose the path that's most right. That's what he used to say to me. You know, at the end of the day, they needed to find that he aided and abetted in this conspiracy, right? The idea that he wanted to block the election or block someone from attaining office. That was a violation of the New York election law at the end of the day. Do you think they got there with this? Because not only, a lot of people thought the problem with the prosecution's case was they couldn't prove that he actually knew what was going on, or he, you know, had someone do it, or aided and abetted someone, or encouraged someone to do this.
Donald Trump was standing on very solid legal ground, right? He could come back and say, this is my attorney. I trusted him to know better and to know what to do and what not to do. I believed in him. I had a deep relationship with him, and so I believed that he was doing things according to the law. I'm not an attorney, and so I believe he stood on, you know, you're this wealthy billionaire, you hire a young attorney, and you pay him gobs of money. He looks up to you. You're running for president. The jury must have believed that Donald Trump was the person in control, and Michael Cohen had no intelligence, no intellect, was just doing. So to me, that's why it was difficult. I didn't get there because there was an attorney as a buffer. If there was a banker and you were instructing your banker to make these payments, easier case at that point.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, folks, once again, just moments ago, all right, actually, I think we have a live shot of the president talking outside of the courthouse right now. So let's go out there live.
You have a show of respect, DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent And it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win. Because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Why did voters vote for convicted felons?
Are you going to call out?
Reacting to the verdict today as he was found guilty on all charges by a New York City jury. And again, he called himself an innocent man. He's done that throughout, even as far as the allegations within the trial of having these affairs with other women. The whole country is rigged, is something he said, and pointed to the trial perhaps being rigged, and that we will keep fighting. Michael Jaafar, I know that probably means he's going to appeal. Yeah. I mean, probably. He definitely will appeal. Since a lot of people feel like there are a lot of appealable issues in this case.
Oh, he has to appeal. He has no choice but to appeal. And you know what I'd be looking for is will ramp into quick mode to get the appeal done before the election, which if it's a non-bizarre world at this point, this is another year, he's going to have to appeal. Crazy pandemonium to see how this case shakes out, and now how the other indictments.
I mean, the appeals court has an option, Michael, because again, you do have the election coming up. They could punt it down the road and say, we'll deal with this after. Why this was an historic hush. First time a president, a former sitting president, no less. So they could certainly do it right now. Let's let this go, and we'll deal with it after the election.
Coming to me right now, this is not a federal, he won't be able to pardon himself if he becomes president, right? So if he wins the election, he won't be able to pardon himself. He'll have to face the music on this. And so, yeah, if the appeals court does the right thing, they will punt this until after the election. You don't want to get involved in an election by deciding the week before the election, hey, no, the appeal is denied, you know, we're bringing this back down, which then he can appeal to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, again, you know, we've seen the politicization of courts, and I think when they can avoid it, they will. So that's definitely a possibility here. One of the interesting things about this case, and you talked about them not having the jury instructions, what they did have, though, was all the evidence on a computer. They had a couple of IT guys on the jury who agreed to volunteer to handle dealing with all the evidence, but it went all back with them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the more evidence, the more access you give jurors, the better. Again, that's why I was so bothered by not giving them the jury instruction, because the jury instruction is their job, right? Their job is to fit within the jury instruction, right? So why not give them the jury instruction for such a complicated, unprecedented case? Right? But, yeah, the IT guys and them having access to the computer, they're going to have to, because this is a very complicated fact pattern because it's so nuanced. So I think that was a good thing.
Yeah. Now, as far as bringing this prosecution in the first place, of course, again, a lot of politics behind this. Are you of the mind that this might have been a politically motivated prosecution, or was this a legitimate prosecution that needed to, in the name of justice, be brought?
My opinion is this was highly politicized and it should not have been brought. I was trying to look at precedents where somebody not called Donald Trump was indicted on similar factual basis. I could not find one. Now, somebody could correct me and say, hey, no, there was just one guy back in 1978, right, from the Nixon administration. They could say that, but I could not find a precedent for this charge. It's so mincing word. This is the old adage that's said under the record, which is, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Everyone commits a felony every single day without them knowing it. It had that tinge to it.
Yeah, a lot of people feel the same way. All right. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Now, before we head back to court, I want to bring in my guest joining us, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. Great to see you again, Michael. This case, not a lot of forensic evidence in this case. And you know, it's evidenced by the fact it took 11 years for them to decide to bring this trial. So that tells you something about the case. But I say it's a lot about nuance and innuendo. We heard some of that with this witness, talking about the reaction that she saw from the victim in this case vis-a-vis her husband. The way she treated him, the way he treated her, some of the ways that she reacted to him, the things that he was doing, all those things creating a pattern that would lead, of course, to what the ultimate thing was here, that he murdered her. So that to me, is where the strength of the state's case comes.
I think that's pretty much the case. Earlier on, when they were in direct examination with the prior witness, I threw my hands up and said, gossip, right? I know it's not an actual objection. It's hearsay, but I said, this is not even hearsay. This is gossip, right? Yeah. And there was just a bunch of gossip, and I felt like I was in high school. And so for me, the reason this puzzled me as a cold case, because it's not that it was a cold case and then they found the culprit and then brought charges later on. This was a cold case where they knew exactly who they were going to charge 10 years ago, decided not to, and then 10 years later they charged him as though this is some sort of a drunk driving case, and they just got around to it. So I think that this, pretty much, the lack of forensic evidence, they must have some really compelling witnesses to say that he was abused. They've got to get the jury to a point where when they go into that box, Michael, they say, there's literally not a single other person that would have done this except for this man.
I think, Mike, I think that's where this case lies in terms of they looked at this case. One DA had it. A new DA came in, took a second look at it, and that's why it sort of got momentum to bring the charges. But again, this is one of those cases where you have all these factors lining up in favor of charging the husband, the one closest, the one who last saw her alive. We see it often in these cases. But really, I think what this case is about is there's no other person that has come about who might have committed this crime.
This woman was exercising at 7 o'clock in the morning at the YMCA. She had no money. She was not a politician. She was not a banker. She was not a gangster. She had no other person that was...
She was a little bit of a swinger, though, Mike.
She was.
It sounds like it. Sounds like
maybe
it.
Someone didn't want his wife to know, and then he kicked her in the head. But yeah, I mean, but her husband, who all fingers point to him, and there's no forensic evidence. But other than that, if there's even a dot of evidence that linked him to the crime, I think he would have taken a plea. That's how strong the other evidence against him would be at that point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, stand by, Mike. I want to take folks back into court now for more testimony. It's interesting, Mike. Do you agree that it's going to be a difficult case? Because, again, we're hearing a lot of this evidence that this guy was very controlling. And we've seen over and over again. I think if the state presents their case correctly, the idea that this guy wanted a lot of control over her, but yet she was trying to assert her independence. 3 weeks after she files for divorce, she's dead.
I've seen people get convicted on less and acquitted with more, right? So I believe that there's definitely, we're in the ballpark now of if he's convicted, I would not be shocked. It's still early. Obviously, the prosecution has to finish their case. The defense has to put on their case. But what I've seen already at least provides a motive, provides that this guy was a creep. He was just a villain to be married to. I'm walking away from today with me feeling that this guy, to be married to him, you're married to a villain.
And Michael Jaafar. Michael, I'll start with you. What is the strategy that you're beginning to see in the cross-examinations here by the defense?
Michael, I hate this defendant now. I think the strategy is becoming clear. I think the prosecution is now basically just painting him out to be a villain. I've just seen my third witness in a row that used the word stalking without an objection by the defense. And so I think this is becoming clear. Here's this mother in her 40s pulling herself up from her bootstraps. She became a certified, personal trainer. She was doing landscaping, and then 3 weeks after she files a divorce, she had to borrow money from her friend to file. She winds up dead. I think the picture is becoming clear. The prosecution is doing a good job.